in the economic landscape for quite a number of years. So why did you decide to write a book?
Look, it initially started as a review of the past 20 years, which I think is fairly obvious. 94 first democratic elections through to this year, and it kind of started off as an assessment of how well we've done. And then as I got into that, to me it was very obvious that there were some things that we'd done exceptionally well, and that I'm not sure that they've been highlighted enough. I think some of the positives need to be spoken about much more openly. And in this instance, I think the press highlights the negative. So I think there are a lot of positive. But then there are areas that I think we've neglected, and it ends up being a component of how we grow the economy, the missing piece. And to me, that's really the promotion of industry, the promotion of business, and the development of the business sector. We've neglected in this country for a variety of reasons. So I think it ends up being, it was initially a 20-year review, and now I think it's more, how do we take the country forward?
Well, I want to buck the trend. What were the positives that came out?
Okay, so if you look at, we had to get 4 things right. We had to internationalize, go back to 94, we had to internationalize the country. I think we've done a superb job. It's hard to argue that we could have done it a lot better. Second thing is we had to improve government finances. The National Party was putting the government into a very difficult position in terms of finances. I think the ANC under Trevor Manuel improved finances enormously. We had to get inflation lower. Remember, back in the 80s, inflation was 15%. Interest rates were almost 20%. We had to get that down. I thought the governor of the central bank, Tito, did a great job in getting inflation under control. Jill Marcus has continued that on. We've got single-digit interest rates. I also think that we've made remarkable progress on alleviating some of the social backlogs. I think it was underestimated the extent of those backlogs. So if you look at the provision of electricity to houses, running water, reducing malnutrition, social grants, the list is quite substantial. And I think that we've made what I would regard outstanding progress. Unfortunately, we've neglected the development of the part of the economy that really creates the jobs, that really creates the tax base, that drives the economy, and that's the business sector.
The missing piece, the business sector, elaborate.
Well, if you want to develop, if you want your economy to be successful, you want to grow jobs, which is key to South Africa, you've got to have a vibrant, competitive business sector. It's very difficult to do it without it. When you look at any business sector around the world, they need a couple of ingredients. They need skills, and I'm not sure that we've produced the sufficient skills. They need infrastructure, and I think we've neglected key components of our infrastructure. The energy the electricity is an obvious. And then they need things like technology. They need better regulation. So I think on a number of areas, we've let business down. And it's not a question of choosing one over the other. It's not saying we chose social grants over business. It's not that. It's about finding the balance between all the different key components of how you create a successful economy. And I think for the most part, we actually have found that reasonable balance. But when it comes to promoting business, I think there's significant neglect.
Now, in the first chapter of your book, you talk about youth unemployment being the single biggest challenge that South Africa has. Why did you single that particular issue out?
So there are a number of economic challenges that you can put in front. And I think that we tend to kind of not drill down into what is the core challenge facing South Africa. And in my mind, is youth unemployment. If you look at the numbers, they're very high. The youth unemployment rate is 53%. If you add back discouraged workers, it's over 60%. So the numbers themselves are high. Add to that every year more than 1 million children start school in South Africa. And that's not changing. Every year, 1 million people. So if you do the maths, 12 years later when they finish school, 1 million people are going to be looking to enter the economy. That means we've got to be creating jobs of that type of magnitude ultimately. And if I look at South Africa, private sector employment has stagnated. And if we don't provide an opportunity for the youth, that unemployment rate will continue to escalate. And you ultimately end up with the risk of social unrest, social tension, social neglect, etc. So I think the key thing we've got to address is giving young people a real opportunity in this economy.
30 seconds. Do you think Moodys jumped the gun, or were they right in downgrading our South African banks?
I think I think it's a bit of overreaction. I don't think our banking sector is in any way vulnerable, and I certainly don't think that they're not supported by the sovereign. I think they will be supported, have been supported by the sovereign. I think the downgrade was a little bit of overreaction. If you go back a couple of years to the global financial crisis, South African banks stood out in global terms as one of the best managed, the safest banking systems in the world. Nothing's changed from that perspective. I don't think ABLE suggests that there's underlying weakness in our banking sector.
Thanks for your time and all the best with your book.
Thanks a
Kevin.
lot.
That was Kevin Lings, author of recently published The Missing Piece.